Annyeonghaseyo. My name is BluePlays, and with the LCK right around the corner, let's have a look at the best teams coming up in the Spring Split. Before we get started, a quick summary on how I rank these teams. Teams will be ranked from D to S on how likely they are to qualify for MSI, where D rank is will not qualify for playoffs, and S rank is most likely to win the split. But let's not waste time and get straight into the list. Starting in the D tier, we have DRX and Fredit BRION. Starting off with DRX, we have tragic news. Unfortunately, the DRX team that we loved from last year is completely gone. The only remaining member is Pyoshik. He's 20 years old, he's still a rookie, and he's the oldest member on the team. This is proving to not be very beneficial for the team. With a team full of rookies, the first split is going to be incredibly challenging for this team, and it'll be exciting to see if they can come anything other than last, because that would already be a lot more than expected, especially by the wide audience and community. Unfortunately for DRX, this doesn't look like their year. Moving on to Fredit BRION, we have a convoluted mess of ex-challenger Korean players. The old APK Prince or Seoul 1 Prince that we loved with players like Hybrid is gone. Now we just have a bunch of challenger players in a team. They have a little bit of experience, that's why I rank them slightly higher than DRX, but also it's the same as DRX. None of these faces are very well known, and to gauge these teams is incredibly difficult, so ranking them at lower, considering after we saw Demacia Cup and their performance wasn't that good, so we're going to have to put them at the bottom of the list along with DRX. Moving into the C tier, we have Liiv Sandbox. Now this team is basically ex-Sandbox. They just rebranded their name, changed it up a bit. They lost some good players like Gorilla, but these were replaced with players like Effort, so I think Effort will fit in nicely in this slot. He has quite a bit of experience from playing on T1, and hopefully he can transfer this into some good shot calling. And hopefully this team does a little bit better than last year. But the way it's looking, I wouldn't say they're going to be much better than last year, if at all, considering some of the other teams look a lot better than last year. So this is why I put Sandbox in C tier. Hopefully they do surprise us. That'll be very exciting to see, but it would ruin my tier list, so maybe not. Moving into the B tier, I have KT Rolstar, Afreeca Freecs, and Hanwha Esports. If I could separate these teams, I would say that relative to each other, KT Rolstar and Afreeca Freecs would be a B-, and Hanwha Life would be like a B++. So starting off with KT Rolstar, I think we're going to see a very consistent team like last year. I think KT Rolstar is that middle of the pack warriors that no matter what happens, they're always you can always rely on them to do okay. Now, the potential of them taking over some of the better teams here, it's there. It's obviously there. But I think that similar to all other teams in the B tier, they suffer from drastic roster changes. And this could obviously be really good for the team, especially if they're underperforming. But it also means that the teamwork and coordination is not going to be the same level as, say, a team that has been together for a longer period of time. And this can really, really suffer against some of the higher teams on this list, where every split decision counts. An indecision whatsoever can lose the game. But there are also some very exciting things about KT Rolstar's new roster. They have the introduction of Hybrid, who's an incredible AD carry, and they have the king of consistency in the mid lane himself, Yukao. So hopefully these players can help the other players on the team develop, and hopefully the communication and teamwork gets better in no time, and you see this team do much better than middle of the pack, and see them in top 4. That'd be wonderful. Now moving on, these points are very similar to Afreeca Freecs, but I think Afreeca Freecs has its own problem in itself. Now, we saw Afreeca Freecs perform awfully in the Kesper Cup. Now, I believe that this will improve by the LCK, but I still think that the issues we saw within Kesper Cup are going to be transferred into the LCK. For example, you grab Bang from NA, I think he's past his prime. He's still a good player, but compared to the other 8 macro and high mechanic AD carries in Korea, he just won't stand a chance. Also, another issue for a team like the Afreeca Freecs is their very weak mid laner. Unfortunately, Fly isn't considered the best mid laner, and he has proven that he can play okay, but compared to other mid laners like Chovy, Showmaker, Faker, Closer, etc., he's not to the same level. And especially with the current meta where mid lane is very important, I think this will make Afreeca Freecs suffer. Moving on to Hanwha Life Esports. This is a very exciting roster. This is kind of a DRX 2.0 in a way. They picked up players like Chovy and Def, just to mention a few. But what happens about this team is, I feel like by adding all these good players, there's still a little bit of what's it called, player separation in a way, where the communication just isn't there as well. For example, you do still have the weak top and jungle synergy Hanwha Life has, and this is really going to suffer. I think Duran and Pioshik were better than the current Hanwha Life top and jungle setup, but I do think the Hanwha Life can potentially make it to MSI on a very, very skim note. If they manage to figure things out, maybe, but we're talking about like 0.1% chance here. So let's move on to the next teams. Now, moving on to B tier, we have Nongshim Redforce, and we also have GEN.G. Now, both of these teams are really, really exciting, and we're probably going to see them get into the top 4 in the region, and yeah, we're going to see some great plays out of them. So let's start with Nongshim Redforce. This is Team Dynamics 2.0. Team Dynamics showed some really, really amazing stuff last year. The fact that that was their first split, and they performed quite admirably, considering a lot of these players were not known beforehand. It is really exciting to see what Nongshim Redforce can do as they develop. And this is one of the really, really exciting things when a team sticks together. You get to see these type of improvements happen. Obviously, some players have left the team and been replaced, but I think all of these changes have been for the better of the team. And as we saw at Kesper Cup, even though they did lose to Dam1 Gaming, they showed that they are capable of getting into the upper brackets of the region. So we're going to see some great stuff. Next up, we have GEN.G. Nothing changed about this roster, so expect almost the same GEN.G as last year. The same players, the same performance. I don't think the team could really improve anymore. So this is why I don't put them into the S tier. I think that they've kind of peaked as a team. There's a little bit of optimizations, but I think some of the players are starting to get a little bit rustier. For example, Clid, I think he has made some pretty big mistakes in the jungle recently, especially at Worlds. It didn't really look that good. And considering BDD is an amazing mid layer, and it just didn't work at Worlds. And maybe they come back really amazing, but I think putting them high A is a pretty good estimate to where they'll be. I think there's obviously 2 teams above. I think they'll perform better, and let's get into that. So in the S tier, I have 2 teams that I believe have equal chance to win the LCK. Obviously, these are Dam1 and T1. I put T1 slightly higher than Dam1 though. So let's see. We have Dam1 Gaming, world champions, and they came back. They look amazing. They played Kesper Cup. They have a new top laner, Khan. I think he fits Nuguri's playstyle quite well, but I don't think he is as good as Nuguri. So in effect, I think this is a slight downgrade. Also, the fact that there's a new player, I think obviously the team has to get to know each other a bit better. He has to fit the slot in nicely, communication, etc. I think this drops the team slightly. I think some of the players have gotten better. A Beryl, for example, looks absolutely amazing. But the issue I find is, as long as teams learn to target ban Canyon, because Canyon seems to be the really big issue right now. I think Showmaker is really good as well, but considering the meta where Graves is insane jungle, and you got a lot of early game junglers that can snowball the game, this is Dam1's playstyle. So this is why I think they have a really high chance of winning, but there are some issues with this. If you can correctly target ban and learn Dam1's early aggressive playstyle, play against it, adapt, you can see they'll crumble. This team will crumble. It's happened before, and it might happen again. And last but not least, we have T1. Now, why do I think T1's coming first? Well, first of all, T1 had a lot of issues last year. they played a lot with rosters, especially towards the end of the split, and apparently there was a lot of issues with the coach at the time, Coach Kim, and I think there was a lot of internal issues. I think a lot of these have been fixed up in the preseason, as we've seen a lot of coaching staff changes, and I think overall T1 has cracked down on this, and hopefully we see a more adaptive T1 to something as of 2 years ago, rather than end of last year, I should say. And basically, this isn't the only reason I believe that T1 will win. There has actually been a couple of rumors by Doinby, for example, who said that everyone he's spoken to that has scrimmed against T1 during the off-season has lost, and apparently T1 had amazing scrim results, the best in the region, and against other international teams. This is big news. Not only does this say that T1 has already learnt the current metas of the game, but the fact that it didn't show what they had to offer at Cospa Cup is kind of hard to estimate. But the big idea here is, I guess they were trying to hide some meta stuff so that they could bring in some really exciting players at the start of the split. I also think T1 has an incredible roster with players like Yumiyashi or Teddy, and Faker and Closer. Both of these players come intertwine. You got very high mechanic players and very high experience players. I also think with the introduction of Carrier, the support role will fit perfectly, and T1's bot lane will probably be the scariest in the league. Only issue now becomes whether T1 can function in the jungle well. This has been their biggest downfall, and I believe that against Dam1 this can be quite scary, but if T1 can learn to adapt, they will easily beat Dam1 Gaming. Anyway, this is my LCK tier list. If you disagree or agree, comment down below your thoughts, and I love having a conversation. I don't care if you disagree, I like to know your information. It always helps, and it's always fun to have a conversation about the passion that is League of Legends. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, it always helps me and helps grow the channel. And also, please check out my Twitter account, it's quite dead, so yeah, let's try and get some more people in there, and yeah, have a great day.